Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Pride. Barton Jackson, he, him, former banker, raging homosexual, executive director of NGLCCNY, which is the National LGBTQ+ and Allied Chamber of Commerce, New York. Very long name. You can call us NGLCCNY or the Chamber for short, whatever is easiest. I want to thank Dominic and Yiting for reaching out to the Chamber to present today. When we thought about building outside the system, that's literally what the Chamber does. So we do a couple of things that you would expect a Chamber of Commerce to do as a 501c6 not-for-profit, just gayer. And we also certify businesses that are 51% owned and operated by LGBT US persons. That means if a household, a nonprofit, another small business, a corporation, or a government says, I need someone to do our HVAC, and I want that to possibly come from a queer-owned company, they can come to us. And we do that for a very specific reason, and we heard a lot about frameworks and systems today, and as somebody from a very socio-capitalist background, I wanted to share about why we do this work. And that is because, as we all probably know, and as we think about how we engage in Pride this year, economically, it has been the institution of America since its colonial time that LGBTQ+ folks, even in New York, face challenges. You can go to the next slide. Since 1646 until present, there is a lot of flux and verve when it comes to when things go poorly and when things go well for our community. And we have a long-standing tradition of oppression, repression, and predation. And it comes at varying intensities of scale, especially when there's intersectionally diverse identities within our community, right? So one of the interesting things about our community as we kind of think about the developments of positive change, it's a really narrow band. Not really since the 60s have we started to see movement within the community. So, for example, what was yesterday the anniversary of? Does anybody know? Marriage equality. How old is marriage equality? 11 years, I heard it, yes. So marriage equality for our community is not even a consenting aged adult yet, right? So what does that mean for us? It means instability of household formation, affirming, parental households. About 22% of all LGBTQ+ New Yorkers that are in a same-sex household are actually parenting. So we have a smaller generation of economic impact. We have less opportunity to engage in the social contract of our country and our state, and we're kind of having to catch up. Not only that, our population is replenishing itself. From the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, which really didn't calm down until the mid-aughts. So you can think of it from the time of George Michael singing to Taylor Swift. We had a population that was getting decimated and was only starting to repair itself just from natural regrowth. So those challenges make it very, very difficult for us to participate economically. It also makes things very, very difficult to think about all the other ways queer New Yorkers contribute to our neighborhoods, our communities, our cities, our states, and the US in general, because we're seen in a two-dimensional way. We're either health and human services or we're a civil rights issue. So we don't begin to think about the economic opportunities that come along with that. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is what it kind of frankly looks like. When you look at an economy, you don't look at just like one piece of it, like a specific industry or somebody's ability to participate in just one part of anything, right? So your ability to go to elections, the ability to express yourself at work and not be audited so that you can provide business intelligence, the ability to go out and be comfortable knowing you can volunteer in your own neighborhood, whether that's like delivering food door to door for GMHC during the holidays or cleaning up a local park with a food insecurity group or marching in Pride, right? All of those things have economic impacts to them. And we see it in a layered way throughout the history of New York and presently still to this day. Criminalization and policing, employment exclusions which still exist even despite a very strong employee protection background in this state. We also see it coming up in housing and family exclusion, along with health and safety burdens HIV/AIDS and the current back and forth when it comes to federal grant dollars that have done a lot of funding and a lot of good, now are having to be shifted to other sectors. So now we're getting back to just the bare basics of the ability to survive for parts of our community and the access to even have that luxury to survive. We see it in capital and market exclusions, and also in data invisibility. This is probably the biggest challenge that we have as a community, and one of the reasons the Chamber exists. We're not counted. You can't tell me how many businesses are queer-owned in our city or in our state. Does anybody have a guess about how many LGBT New Yorkers there are? 2 million is a little high, but it's not a bad guess. It's 1.2 million. So if you took the general population ratio of entrepreneurship in this state, that means there should be about 43,000 LGBTQ plus New Yorkers that either have part ownership in a company or majority ownership in a company. The Chamber is the only certifying body that does the work that we do to try to identify those businesses. We found about 500 of them. There should be about 130,000 business owners statewide. But because we've never been studied, we've never been looked at from our economic contributions as citizens in the Empire State, we don't know where we are, what we do, how well we do it, what we need to do it better. And that's something that the Chamber really moves to do. If we could go to the next slide, please. So because of that neglect of the economy, there's real impacts that we have to look at. So whether you're a corporate professional, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're a gig worker or somebody in the creative economies and industries, there's something that's really a challenge when it comes to workforce access. There's less access to business education, capital investments, the ability to start entrepreneurship, let alone housing and even thinking about building a family or stabilizing housing expenses in one of the most expensive places in the US, right? The other challenges that we find is that health and safety, right? So when you're navigating all of this and you have no knowledge about what access issues there are for entrepreneurs or for business professionals, where do you have to do your insurance to make sure that you're gonna be okay and you're gonna be healthy, right? Are you on open market? Are you not? Do you have an advocate? Do you not? Do you have an advisor, right? Those are real gaps that exist at every single level of our community segment when it comes to marketplace, from nonprofits all the way up. And those challenges become really interesting around capital and investment access. So our founders from coast to coast only receive about 0.5% of all investment money in the angels and venture capitalist area out of like a $2.1 trillion bucket. So our businesses, because they're less visible, also have less ability to start up. And we see that then in supplier diversity and market access. So this is where our businesses are doing business with other companies. Because they're not visible, they lose out to the general population. And that means that those businesses don't grow as quickly. They usually exist for economic security purposes or just income security of a household. And so then they can't hire more. They can't churn out, they can't grow, they can't expand. And when they don't have that ability to do so, or at least the visibility and connection for those opportunities, then they're having less impact where we really need it. Because what can a business owner do? They can donate back to nonprofits, they can mentor, they can invest, and if somebody, runs a successful company and decides to retire, they can exit and sell it to the next generation. And if they choose to do so visibly within the community, that's a possibility that's neglected. And also, it all comes down to data invisibility. So again, one of the big things that the Chamber pushes is for New York City to actually update its administrative codes so that when it does disparity reporting, which it does for racial minorities and women-owned businesses, is to include LGBT businesses in that mix to figure out where we are, what we need, and what to do. But until that time, we don't even know 0.5% of our general business population of LGBTQ entrepreneurship in the state and what we need to do things better. Next slide, please. So if we were visible, there could be about 130,000 businesses, of which we only know 505. If that was put on par with the same type of businesses, and they're all across all 11 standard industries, that could mean LGBTQ plus businesses are contributing about 250 to 750,000 jobs for New Yorkers. And it probably means about 56 to 65 billion in gross domestic product for the city and the state. For us, that means tax revenue that goes back into infrastructure that we need, whether that's education, transportation, programmatic work, gaps where the cities and the states that we live in haven't addressed the issues for LGBTQ plus New Yorkers in a sustainable and meaningful way. Next slide, please. So this is what we work on. So I mentioned how we're pushing for studies. We also, through our certification efforts, find ourselves in this odd place where we are the only warehouse of data in the city and the state on LGBTQ plus businesses. I can tell you that they last longer than straight businesses, and they also tend to outperform them once they get to a certain size and scale. And it's also something that's really important to us. We certify businesses, as I mentioned before. Our certification is national. So one of the things that is really important for us is we want our businesses to compete not just in New York, but across the US and for corporations that are global partners of ours at a global scale. We want that money to come back to New York. So again, we have a plastic economy where it goes back into our nonprofits and into our community, especially when we see, federal governments that are a little less friendly. We also strengthen the fundamentals. One of the things that I'm very proud of, and we're actually taking applications right now, is a nationwide virtual cohort-based program called Own It, which is a transgender and gender-expansive business 101. 25 business owners who are just starting out, they get education, but they also get connected to free business advisory. They get connected to a mentor within the community, and our chamber, through our sponsorship, actually pays for the first year of membership at any LGBT chamber across the US. So wherever they are, they're connected to a business community to help them succeed. The other thing that it helps us do is we expand networks of customers. So we actually connect people to business opportunities. We encourage professional networking across LGBTQ plus and allied businesses to drive those impacts. And we have capital readiness programs, and we also track the outcomes and reinvestments. One of the things that I'm also very proud of that we did this year, when we saw the corporate pullback from pride organizations, we did a self-exploratory study with New York City Pride and us, and we learned that in just one weekend, New York City Pride, just for the amount of people that come together to raise their voices, spits out about $169.1 million in direct consumer spend. Okay? That's a huge, I think the technical term is a metric fuck ton of money. But it is money that we have questions about. Is that coming back into our community? Are we the ones benefiting from that? How do we redrive that into new investments? And it doesn't even count all the other capital that surrounds founders and funders, nonprofit capital raises, corporations spending money on advertising, media, and community strategy engagements. So that number is very low from what we can just see. It's much larger. So we do all of this to build outside of a system that has historically repressed LGBTQ plus people in the US. And what we are building is a parallel economy where we can go and meet in a room or online or through our business community and say, hey, let's get to know each other and let's self-invest in this generation of business and the next. And when I say business, I don't just mean for-profits. I mean everything from a community-based association all the way up to a Fortune 100 company and anything in between, so that when we face adversity, we have the tools and the capital and the resources to literally open our wallets and say, fixed it, new market, new company, new business, we're covered. Thank you.